Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today's episode is taking a look at 2025, and I'm thrilled to welcome back to the podcast Mr. Roy Dockery, Senior Director of Field Services Research at TSIA, author of The Art of Leading. Roy, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Like you said, we are making this a tradition, Sarah. I get noticed at events now. They're like, "Oh, you're Roy. You're on Sarah's podcast." So it's great to be here. And thank you. You joined me for my State of Field Service 2025. So we are the oracles, I guess, of the field service industry.
Yes.
And now we get to judge how well our predictions were for this year. So I'm looking forward to it.
Exactly. So we got together at the beginning of the year and talked about what we both anticipated 2025 would bring, so we can see, how far off we were, how close we were. So let's start with mine, but we'll both talk about them. So the
Yeah.
first theme that I expected is greater workforce flexibility. Uh, is no longer optional. So organizations needing to offer more flexibility to their frontline workforce because today's talent demands it and because it's entirely possible. What are your thoughts on this?
So I think that there are more positions in field service and adjacent to it that offer greater flexibility, right? So I
Mhm.
think when it comes to the amount of things that we can do remote now, like the advanced support that we're able to do with augmented reality and remote connection tools, I definitely think there are more technical jobs that are not like the scheduler, the dispatcher, right? Like the back office for field service. I think there are definitely more technical jobs now that people can do remotely, but I didn't see as much of a move in flexibility for field service. And I know you
Mhm.
and I talked about this with we have technology now that should be able to give the technicians back. When I got into the field in 2010, you basically got your work and then you were able to manage your work that day.
Mhm.
Right. But then we went through the IoT digital transformation, and now we want to dispatch work orders to people based on their location. And it gives them like a very kind of fixed schedule based on traffic and all that other stuff. And now with the level of complexity of the technology and the AI, we should be able to give some of that responsibility back to the technicians and allow them some more flexibility. It's capable, right? You
Mhm.
can do, and I know, I think I've even heard about it at some events. You can set like working hours per technician, and then
Mhm.
it'll schedule to that. But I'm not seeing a lot of organizations adopt it. And the amount of time people spend on the road is still a high reason for attrition when
Mhm.
you come to overtime and the amount of travel time. And a lot of organizations are still really fixated on utilization and the amount of hours getting done versus absorption and the amount of revenue that a technician is generating. So we're still looking at very old metrics. So even though we did all of this investment to try to optimize and to add efficiency, most people still haven't shifted their view off of I'm looking at utilization, I'm looking at travel time, and I'm just trying to fill up a technician's schedule as much as possible
Mhm.
versus looking at someone's skill set, their experience, what they can do, and then how can we empower them to basically add the most value to the organization. So that's a
Right.
little bit of a letdown that we're still very it's like we're doing things faster than we used to do them when it comes to scheduling and rescheduling and changing same day routes, but we're not necessarily doing it better,
Mhm.
especially in a way that's better for the technicians, is what
Yeah.
I've seen largely.
Yeah, I was going to say through the lens of the employee. I think the other factor here, I mentioned just a week or two ago, I hosted the first Standout Leaders community call, and we were talking through some different trends. And one of the things that came up related to hiring, retention, and sort of the talent side of things is just that I think what has been more this year than I maybe would have anticipated when I was writing all of this at the end of last year is just overall uncertainty, I think has taken a little bit of pressure off. Not that companies aren't still really focused on talent, and they certainly need to be, but because of all of the, economic uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty, there seems to be leaders were saying there's a little bit of a relief of pressure on that front for some because people are just kind of staying put. Like they're tolerating a bit more than maybe they want to because of all of those circumstances. So I think essentially we've seen less pressure on companies to offer this because people are sort of watching and waiting to see how things go and what's going to happen with the job market and with the economy and whatnot. And so companies in turn can feel that they can sort of stay as is versus having to adapt to the workforce's demands. So I
Yeah,
think
and
that
we saw some of that in
factors
our
into.
surveys as well when we did an analysis for like hybrid workforce that
Hmm.
it wasn't there wasn't like an overemphasis in our data that people were necessarily trying to significantly grow their field service organization. So most people were like trying to maintain
Hmm.
either at replacement rate or even potentially expecting a little bit of a decline because of the people that would be retiring.
Hmm.
So to your point, there was this big push, right, for years that we've got to get the new generation of workforce in because I think there was an expectation of growth, like as far as like needing to hire, year over year net more technicians. And
Right.
I agree. It's like I know some people that were like, we need to double, and then it was like, well, we're gonna scale by 10 to 15% and kind of take it slow. So I think there are some definite economic pressures there. And I think the overall market and just what you see on LinkedIn about people trying to find jobs and the amount of time that it takes, I do think that kind of great resignation energy we had in like 2022 to 2023, where it was just kind of like open green
Hmm.
fields and people would quit without having anywhere to go. I think you see a lot less of that as well. So I think that's probably creating because there is, and you and I both have pretty big LinkedIn followings, right? There's a lot of people who either from a layoff or, someone left a role and then it's taking a lot longer for people
Hmm.
to get hired. And so even if people are trying to leave, I don't think they may be getting interviews and responses as much as possible because there's so many people who are available that
Hmm.
were even displaced from other industries with the tech layoffs, especially a lot of the remote workers, the government workers, and things of that nature as well. So
Yeah.
even some of that attrition we have that's really like pushing the balloon because we just go from one company to another. I also think we're getting less of that because there's so many people from outside of the field service industry that were either in government or somewhere else in the tech sector that are applying for some of those roles as well now. So you're not getting a resignation letter, not because they don't want to leave, but because they didn't get the job offer,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's true in the overall job market as well.
Yeah. I just caught myself beginning to talk about where I think this is headed. And then I remembered this is not a predictions, this is a reflection. So I'm going to not do that. So the second one was customer expectations will expose service complacency. So what I was talking about here in last year's standout service trends report, one of the biggest divides that I noticed is that peace of mind and guaranteed performance ranked as customers' second highest priority, but only 26% of respondents offered outcomes based services, and another 26% still operated reactively, so offering only break fix. What are your thoughts on customers' expectations versus where service organizations are getting in terms of sophistication?
Yeah, so customers expect resolution now, hands down, right? So when you talk about outcome-based service or value, they want resolution. I've said this at a couple of conferences and some of the councils, the advisory boards and stuff that I sit on. They caught on to us. Response time means absolutely nothing if you don't fix the problem,
Hmm.
right? So a lot of customers, whether they're trying to get it in an SLA, people aren't happy anymore about a 2 hour response time or a 4 hour response time if you show up and you don't have the parts or the technician's not trained or you can't resolve the issue. So the customer base has definitely moved to we want resolution and we want to measure you based on resolution. And I think different industries are at different points being able to measure that or are willing to agree to it.
Mm-hmm.
right? But what that's doing as well is I think it's creating an opportunity that we're seeing is that you've got a lot of these generic service providers who aren't from the equipment manufacturer, who aren't from your big companies, that are more willing to actually sign up for resolutions because all they do is service.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's becoming a differentiator when you're willing to offer like a resolution or like an outcome-based service. So it is definitely it's the standard, it's like table stakes that the customer expects, especially if you have a customer that has like a variety of technology on their site because like the enterprise IT, right, the five nines has been in
Mm-hmm.
software forever in kind of enterprise IT and connectivity. So if you have someone that's been functioning in that space in enterprise IT, healthcare technology, they want the resolution, but they're also starting to see it like in industrial equipment and some more of the hardware services side. So I think people just have to a lot of organizations this year in 2025 have been trying to evolve their service portfolio. Like I did an event in Austin, over the summer, and that was one of the things that we were asked to talk about, like it's like services convergence and how do
Mm-hmm.
we make a portfolio that's more around outcomes or value. So I think people were trying this year. So I think there were a lot of tests,
Mm-hmm.
but they still haven't got there. Some people are lacking the data to really be able to commit to like a resolution or like an outcome. So I think the biggest hurdle right now for most companies is what does the framework or the formula look like to actually get to outcome. So I think
Yeah.
some people are leaning a little bit more towards resolution and uptime, but where they want to go and where even the industry and the customers are asking them to go is outcome based. But I think most people don't know how to calculate it. So it's like they don't, it's just hard for them to figure out either that value or what does it look like to sell that? How do you price
Yeah.
it? What does the pricing model look like? Seems to be one of the bigger hurdles outside of the data. If they
Yeah.
have the data and they can, they know when it went down, they've got environmental sensors, they've got telemetry data. The struggle that I see when they have the data is a proper pricing model for an outcome-based service.
Yeah. I think it's definitely both. I mean, what I was getting at with this point last year is that the experiences that we all have in our personal lives have caught up now to the expectations of companies across industries, including those in an industrial space that historically never had to meet such intense demands. To your point, I think this actually connects into the next prediction that I had, which is the need to address technology debt becomes urgent. And that is definitely true because that evolution requires organizations to not only have that data, but to have incredibly effective ways of using it.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you can't even create an offer, right? But
correct.
and I'm not taking away from the point that like that is its own struggle for people. Companies that have historically operated in a transactional manner really struggle with grasping the concept of an intangible, the concept of a value-based narrative and all of that and everything that goes with it after the concept. But there's this real need for companies to understand that not too very long ago, operational excellence was a competitive differentiator. And
Yeah,
now it is just an expectation. So that means that you need service management tools that are capable of a very reliable uh, degree of operational excellence. And also that you understand that isn't at this point, the competitive differentiator that it once was.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. And when you talk about the technology debt, right, just to again connect it to the previous point, when we had and you and I have been in the industry for a while, I think we've known each other for almost probably 10 years now. But we had the IoT push, right? But the challenge, and this comes from the delayed investment that we always see with field services. We always get the technology last, we get the investment last, we're always like begging for the crumbs on the table. So when we did the big IoT push and we had the connection and we were collecting the data, it was still really focused around product lifecycle management and then sales, right?
Hmm.
So what's end of life? When can we sell them a new one? What information are we getting? We collected that data and no one really tried to determine, okay, how does this change the way that we service the equipment other than maybe being a little bit more proactive and we look at cycle count versus periodicity and things of that nature. And so now, because like you said, everyone else, like all of my other stuff is connected. My refrigerator tells me when I need a filter. So every other, especially in the white spaces, like with our TVs, our electronics, our devices, all of that also is used to improve our service experience as well,
Hmm.
not just the technology. So we use the data to make the technology better, but we were lagging on the customer experience, especially the field side of it.
Hmm.
Right. So we've got all of this debt to where they're like, and even I talked to companies who have deployed AI, we all start in support services. So your remote team has augmented reality and they've got AI, and your field service team doesn't even use the same tools that your back office is using, right?
Hmm.
So that debt just it again, it's caught up with us, and now everybody expects the Uber like experience, the DoorDash like experience, the Instacart experience, or even small local, like my small local retailers have better, or local like HVAC and plumbing companies have better service experiences than some of the national ones that I deal with, right? Or
Hmm.
large mechanical contractors that I see even from a consulting perspective because they were able to adapt quickly
Hmm.
and kind of make that. And it's a smaller investment because they've got a smaller team. But
Yeah.
I definitely think that there's still a lag there, and it's getting to the point now where it's the it's the burden that's stopping them from really being able to differentiate or to be competitive,
Hmm.
because you've lagged so long that like now everything's doing well, but if you haven't invested in your field service, now your execution arm, your customer facing arm, your most valuable asset is actually behind
Hmm.
on technology and behind on investments. So like you said, your field service management platform, I was getting a bunch of inquiries earlier this year when the tariff thing popped up because there's a bunch of people who are still managing their supply chain and field service with spreadsheets.
Hmm.
And it's 2025, right?
Hmm.
So even the asset management side of that starts becoming more critical, because it's just something that, it's field service. We have our tendency of like we make it work.
Hmm.
So it makes it very easy for people to ignore us. But it's getting to the point now where we're so behind, it's impacting the customer experience.
Hmm.
And so, and like you said, it's just no longer acceptable for that
Right.
customer experience not to be as smooth and as informative and as integrated when the rest of your company has all of this technology and this AI and these agents and chatbots and all of those things as well. So yeah, we're definitely at a deficit there. And
Yeah.
I don't think, and I don't think we made as much progress this year as I would have liked to see, but the awareness of it
Hmm.
is like in my advisory board meetings, the councils that I went to, I think there's more corporate recognition that field service is behind, not just field service knowing that field service is
Hmm.
behind. So there's been a lot of initiatives and investment and kind of directional guidance that you can go do these things that I feel like people have been working through this year that I would have expected them to be walking into this year ready to do.
Yeah.
So it's like they got marching orders this year, but they didn't get much accomplished from what I've seen over the last 11 months.
What you just said was reflected. We haven't released it yet, although by the time this comes out, maybe we will have. But our standout service trends report from this year, there was an increase, I don't remember how significant, in planned investment for next year in field service. So that
Yeah.
aligns with what you're saying. So the next one was AI will bring big wins and big missteps. I'll be honest in saying I didn't see as many missteps as I expected to this year, at least not at the degree that I was thinking about when I wrote this. But I do believe they're coming.
Yeah.
So, we can just roll this one over maybe. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do think there were some big wins. I think and there may be a misstep that there was a misstep that I saw, but it wasn't on the technology side. And and maybe you may have heard this as well because I know you interview people a lot. I think some of the AI service providers, like the technology companies, weren't actually ready to deploy what they were positioning was
Mm,
available. So either some of the feature functionality, some of the ability to customize, right? Like some of that stuff wasn't ready. But even just the speed at which they could deliver the solution, at the rate that people were trying to adopt it seemed to be lagging. So like a
yeah.
lot of people that I know that were doing it, it's like the projects kept getting shipped, kept getting pushed back a little bit here, a little bit there. And then I think the misstep is the amount of time that I think a partner used to have to say, okay, we have an idea, and then that landing on we can deliver it.
Hmm.
That time is that expectation for that time is significantly shorter.
Yeah.
So like so that used to be a 4, 6, 8 month process. Now people expect it to be like 30, 45 days.
Right.
So if there was a misstep, I actually think it was more on the provider side
Yeah.
that they weren't actually ready for people to adopt at the rate, it's kind of like when and you do like it's almost like everyone in the company is terrified if we sell what we think we're going to sell,
Hmm.
because like we're not actually ready to we don't have the deployment resources. And so I think there was actually, like you said, when you even mentioned that reference about the amount of investment, I
Hmm.
think a lot of people decided this year that they were going to go in,
Hmm.
and that they were going to try, and I think a lot of the AI companies were actually overwhelmed with it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't only that, but then also trying to evolve it with the big push for agentic AI. So they were trying to deal with this backlog of everybody who bought what they were already selling while they
Hmm.
were trying to position the new agentic AI thing, which is what we started seeing like second quarter through the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest one that I saw.
Yeah. I think the people that I've talked to, in all fairness, a lot of them are IFS customers that are adopting AI functionality within the IFS platform or related to, right, the
Yeah,
platform. And so one of the things that I think is just really important for us to have more transparent discussions around is the difference between what's possible and what are the realities of what it takes, right? Because
yeah,
maybe what you're saying is true in some instances, like these companies just truly weren't ready. But in a lot of instances, the way that these tools are being marketed and portrayed in the media is that they are the solver of all problems. And
yeah,
the reality is, it kind of goes back to the technology debt piece. Like, if your core systems aren't functional and your data isn't structured in a way that is usable, there's not a whole lot you can do with those tools immediately. You end up
yeah,
having to go back in and do some of that work to get yourself ready to make use of the AI capabilities that are absolutely possible and readily available,
yeah,
but maybe just not realistic based on what your foundational structure is, right? So that's
yeah,
another scenario that I definitely saw some of is, even in the success stories, just some conversation around what did it take to make that possible? How did we need to reformat some of our data? How did we need to manage change, of course? How do we need to, integrate between systems, whatever the things are. I think we need more of those practical conversations about
yeah.
how are those success stories being achieved, because there's sort of this perception of a magic wand that is just not realistic, right?
Yeah, and like you
Um,
said, it's that disconnect in the realism of it, and I agree. Like we did a session at TSA Envision that was actually like, how did it work, right? We was the
mhm,
technology partner of some of their customers, but it was like, no, like how did we actually go through this? And like you said, it was that story of this is where we thought we were gonna go, but
yeah.
we had a gap there. But and I think the other, and so neither one of us said what was a win because we tend towards our negative side in field service. But the one thing I will say that I think AI did well from a win perspective is existing platforms. When you talk about whether it's IFS, ServiceMax, or whoever else, like everyone really stepped up and said, "Hey, like, look, we've got to have our AI stuff out there, and when we roll
Hmm.
it out, it needs to have an impact." And so it was, almost that recommendation, like if your platform doesn't have AI, just wait a couple of weeks.
Hmm.
Or if you see some feature functionality that like just wait like to the next release. So I think a lot of companies did leverage, even within TSIA, we built out AI within our own platform. So I
Hmm.
think it was a big win of helping with like adoption, help, especially people who are already on the platform and like optimizing some of the functionality. I think that was a win that allowed a lot of existing companies to deliver more value
Hmm.
to their existing customer base without it like an exceptional amount of additional costs, right? It wasn't like this big implementation or like a huge SAP upgrade or something like that. It was just
Hmm.
something you go in there, you can cut it on today, and now it's significantly improving the way that you deliver. So I think that was definitely a win on field service management platforms, asset management, being
Hmm.
able to add that AI stuff in, have those generative conversations, or use it for your knowledge management, development, and content creation was really good. That I think added a lot of value for the industry as well, and saved a lot of time on
Yeah.
things that people were doing manually or in a semi-automated fashion.
Absolutely. The next one is storytelling will be a must-have skill for service leaders. You had a quote at Standout, which we'll talk a little bit more about. You said, "You can't fake authenticity. AI can rewrite an email, but it can't inspire trust." And that made me think of the importance of how service leaders communicate and the idea of storytelling being imperative for particularly how they communicate outside of the service function.
Yeah.
I don't think we got as far as we need to on this either. What are your thoughts?
I don't think we got there either, but what I think we are seeing is a shift in an industry to where people want leaders and not just kind of team builders or task delegators, right? So
Hmm.
like this, all of these layers of having a COO and a senior VP and a VP and then a director and like that's starting to flatten a lot. And I think
Hmm.
people are expecting leaders to be able to handle more of the engagement with team leaders, provide that direction, right? And really be kind of like servant oriented leaders than high level managers.
Hmm.
And in that, for you to be able to inspire and to be able to motivate teams like that, you're going to have to be effective at storytelling and delivering that message. So I think reorgs that we've seen throughout the year, and you and I are
Hmm.
both connected very heavily, so we see just about every job change in field service across industries. But I think the reorgs are driving that, and you're starting to see the storytelling leaders are the ones that are floating to the top of these organizations or moving over to be like a COO over here or over
Hmm.
there. So even in that kind of like realignment, I feel like the organizations are shifting to get more of those service leaders that have the storytelling skills
Yeah.
that can come in and inspire a team because what they're not getting anymore is the budget to come into my organization and I'm going to give you a bunch of money to hire the people that you want to bring in and then build your own team. I need you to inspire the people who are here. I need you to
Hmm.
do more with what we have. And so you need some of those people that kind of have that, that coach mentality that can build a team up
Hmm.
versus just buying a bunch of talent and bringing it into into companies because I don't see that checkbook is closed for like that hiring like the manager over the manager or the director over the managers or the VP over the directors. You've got to come in and you've got to be able to make a tangible impact without spending a bunch of money on additional headcount that's just
Hmm.
management,
Yeah.
not people who are doing the work or specifically contributing to the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. This is another area where been a few of these, right? Where there's been progress. So it's
Yeah.
good, but there's just still a lot more progress to see. So I'm going to read through yours real quick because I know there's quite a few areas where we overlapped, but then you
Yeah.
tell me what you want to dig more into. So talent acquisition and retention, cost optimization, necessity, supply chain disruptions, technology as an imperative, and emphasis on the human element.
Yeah, so the talent side of it is we talked about that with the tech debt. That's kind of the
Hmm.
same thing. Like we've got to spend money on or the technology side. We've got to spend money on the technology to close that gap.
Hmm.
On either both the talent acquisition and kind of like the human capital priority, I still think we're right. We struggle with this so much in field service. We've been talking about recruiting for 10 years. You and I talked about that a little bit briefly before we jumped on here. I see some different industries making strides. The food service industry is doing great from a training perspective. Like they're investing a lot in kind of connecting with the next generation. You've got like TikTokers that are
Hmm.
talking about oil rigs, and so they're doing it. But I think the bigger parts of the industry are still kind of dependent upon like the existing talent pool, and they're slowly moving in that direction.
Hmm.
So that's slower than I would expect, but it's definitely there. I talked to a lot of the organizations. It takes a long time to move big ships, right?
Hmm.
So there's slow uptake there. And again, I think there's less growth than they expected. So they didn't have to pivot as
Hmm.
hard, and people aren't retiring as soon as they expected either. But it's going to come. It's an inevitable reality. And yeah, and so I think that, like you said, I think a lot of the things we've already touched on. The supply chain one I talked about a little bit. The main thing there is that I think it became, and we talk about assets as well with that, with the what IFS will be doing in 2026. But I think it was supply chain is the thing that we only talk about when there's a global crisis in field
Hmm.
service, right? Last time we talked about supply chain was 2020 and 2021,
Right.
and then we made it through a global pandemic, and then we were like, we're fine.
Hmm.
But I think with the tariffs and just the differences on where to source materials from, there's definitely going to need to be a supply chain 2.0.
Hmm.
And so asset management, depot repair, RMAs, I think that's going to be a big push in coming out of 2025. I think
Hmm.
the gap was recognized again, and whatever solutions were put in place, people realized they're either outdated or they weren't effective when you start talking about redundancy of suppliers, and because
Or
some
they
people weren't
weren't
affected by the global pandemic.
institutionalized, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
exactly.
other thing is sometimes we talked about this during and after COVID, right? Companies realized how quickly they could react or how much they could handle. But then when you didn't have to and you don't have to, you go back to doing what you did before until the next
The next
situation.
thing.
And I think, you made this point earlier about agility and adaptability. Those are just things that are becoming crucial no matter whether there is a current imminent pressure or not. And
Yeah.
so we need systems and tools and processes that are, you know, able to be agile and adaptable, whether there's a current, you know, magnifying glass on that need or not, basically.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, so for me, I think that's the one thing that I would say is that there definitely was more from probably April through October. There was more of a focus on, okay, like you said, like we didn't institutionalize that. This was a person who got really good at it and they don't work here anymore.
Hmm.
And we kind of slid back into bad habits. So looking at different technologies that are available, stuff that they can bolt on to their existing FSM, but there was more of a conversation this year around asset management and RMAs and returns than I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, like Dylan in field service. And so hopefully that energy stays there. And again, we
Hmm.
don't we don't pivot away because some of those things have been worked out, and that people actually take the time to make that investment to improve those systems, and we don't slide back into bad habits.
Hmm. For sure. Anything else on predictions?
No, other than that, I think we covered everything. Yeah, and we're yeah, so I don't, like you said, I'm like you. I don't want to start predicting for next year. So
Hmm.
we are reflecting on our 2025s. I think we can put a period on that one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there aren't any where we were, completely out in left field, but there's some where I think you and I both feel like there's just still a lot more progress to be made. So,
Yeah,
but like we talked about before we started recording, the reality is there's a lot of complexities that make adopting these things incredibly challenging, right? So
yeah,
we can talk about, like you said, we've been talking about recruiting for 10 years. And yes, and maybe well, probably not maybe, but we should be farther along than we are. But there are also, these real world things that bubble up that make that progress tough to achieve sometimes. So, what are, let's talk about some of our favorite moments of the year or highlights. Maybe let's just each share like one professional highlight and one personal, if you're willing.
Okay. Sure. Professional highlight. And I'll take one of yours because it was a lot of fun. I think the standout 50 was phenomenal. Like to be able to participate in that with you and Jed and Maureen, all right, all of the all of the legacy of field service
Hmm.
there with yourself. That was great, and being able to go out there and and share that insight and have dinner with folks. It was encouraging to see as somebody who loves field service and the people who work within the industry. It was exciting just to see the people who were nominating their colleagues and their bosses and things of that nature. Because I mean, as a leader, right, you don't normally get to see when you're in the seat like the recognition. You don't know what the impact is that you're having. You just try to do your job to the best of your ability. So it was awesome to kind of see that and then be able to have those people be highlighted and be on the. I love when you all do the New York Stock Exchange. They're on the ticker out there in Times Square, which is really awesome. I actually got to meet Leroy, who was one of the winners.
Hmm.
I met him at a Cefesa event in
Hmm.
Arizona, so and got to connect with him as well as some other people, building that relationship, which was really cool. Personal thing for this year in 2025, man, there's always so many wonderful personal things going on. What is my highlight for this year? We moved this year.
Hmm.
So we moved. We do a lot community service and serving in our church and stuff like that. So we were driving like an hour every week. So
Hmm.
we bought a new house, kind of moved closer so we can do more community service, which has allowed me to like set up a food pantry and do some clothing drives and some more things in the community here. So that was fun. We got kind of closer to my daughter's college. And I always want to level up my level of efficiency in packing and logistics. And so this year, I was even better. I moved even better than I did the last time because we had
Nice.
it's always raising the bar from a service perspective. But that was great. And moved to a great neighborhood. We have really nice neighbors around here. So it's a slow pace and a little bit more room to stretch out and run around so my son can fly drones and throw frisbees all over the backyard. But yeah, that was a highlight because it was we decided to move and then yeah, I think I told you my house sold in one day and then
Hmm.
we closed on we wound up closing on both of them within a month. So that was a blessing. But yeah, that was a fun time. So now I'm going to interview you on your question. So what was your
Yeah,
professional or do you want to do a personal one first?
I could do personal first.
All right.
And again, I mean, like you, there's so many, but the thing that stands out in my mind is we went on a family trip in April to Costa Rica.
Okay.
And it was a really fun adventure. We love adventures. And it wasn't our first time with the kids out of the country, but it was the first time with that type of trip. I just feel like we had an opportunity to really get into the nature, which is huge
Yeah.
there, and it was really cool to see and just interact with a lot of different people, and it was a lot of fun. My son just said at dinner last night, I want to go back to Costa Rica. Like, it's not quite that easy, but
Yeah, that's
um,
the danger. You set that expectation, and they're like, "Why are
exactly.
we not going to Costa Rica next April?" It was like, "All right, we'll talk about that later."
Yes,
Um,
yes,
that's
for
awesome. All
sure.
right, so and you do a lot. You do a lot of traveling. You go to a lot of events. You get to be a lot of places. If you had to pick one, what was your professional highlight for the year?
Yeah, so it's hard because it was standout. It's an incredible honor to be able to put that together and recognize, such amazing individuals for the second year in a row. But since you took that already, I would say the next one that comes to mind is I did a keynote at Field Service Palm Springs or Field Service West, as they're rebranding it, with Clinton from Tomra on
Okay.
having a service North Star. And I really, and I think he's a great example of the type of leader you and I talk a lot about, being able to story tell, being able to energize and motivate people toward, a bold vision, having empathy, all of those things. So I enjoyed being able to present with him there. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. What about 2026? Anything we want to queue up for people, tell them to watch out for?
Yeah, so at TSIA we do a state of paper every year, so mine's already in with the editors because I like to get things in early. But I'm really going to be focusing on um, how AI is going to allow us to bring like the human touch back to service,
Hmm.
so that we don't have technicians out here doing data collection and and automation tasks, but they can really get back to talking to people, understanding context, dealing with complex problems. And then the other thing I'm gonna start sorting through is, are there actually unique challenges in field service by industry, right? So we know there's these things that kind of affect everybody broad stroke.
Hmm.
But are we missing any gaps? Is there anything particular to healthcare or food service or industrial equipment or data centers, which is a topic that keeps popping up
Hmm.
every other week? And so also just digging into that to see if they're in these verticals, in these different market segments, is there some advice or direction we need to be giving them that's slightly different than the
Hmm.
rest of the industry if they've got a unique challenge. So that's the big thing. But for me, yeah, it's really how do we start leveraging AI and agents to let technicians fix things that are broken
Yeah.
and not collect data and take a bunch of notes and record a bunch of expenses and do a bunch of other stuff, but let them be the person that interacts with the human on site who already tried self-service, who already tried remote support, who already tried your AI tool, and now they've got a person in front of them. That person needs to almost be superhuman now.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so I want to make sure we figure out how to get that person empowered,
Hmm.
to make that experience excellent, because the expectations, as we talked about earlier, with customer experience are just going up. They're getting
Yeah.
higher and higher, and your technician has to be better than your AI agent and your AI bot, which puts a lot of pressure on them. Which means we've got to equip them and give them the tools, to be excellent as well. So
Yeah. I like that framing a lot of how to use it to allow humans to use their human superpowers.
yeah.
That's really good stuff. I have plenty of tricks up my sleeve for 2026. I chuckled when you said you already have your report in. I have not thought about predictions yet. I have not started them yet. So I have my work cut out for me. But we do have some exciting things coming for 2026. Of course, we'll be doing Stand Out again, which is really exciting. I do plan on doing at least one, if not two, Future of Field Service events, probably one somewhere in North America, one in Europe. So, more to come on that. We have an exciting research project that we recently announced with Simon and Kutcher looking at commercial excellence in field service, some of the challenges and opportunities. We have some new stuff coming out with the podcast. And some other surprises as well. So I've been busy these last few months, and you all will get a chance to see some of that come to fruition early next year. But first, I have some stuff to get to for the rest of 2025. So, well, thank you, Roy, for coming and spending some time with me today and helping me to reflect and also for being such an important part of my year as a friend and Future of Field Services year as, such a important, what did you call us, legacy of the field service space. I'm not ready to adopt that adjective quite yet, but yes, I appreciate you supporting and everything you do for the space in collaboration with us and otherwise.
Yeah, and the same with you. Like I said, we've been doing this for years. I appreciate what you've been doing. I remember I saw a post that was like 7 years. When it's crazy how time flies by. I had infants and small children when we started discussing, and now I have college students, and my youngest is a 9-year old. But
Wild.
it's time has been going by. But no, I appreciate what you do as well, and just keeping conversations at the forefront, highlighting leaders, right? Because I think that's important, and it's not just about revenue. It's not just about achieving the numbers. It's how you lead the people through those
Hmm.
changes and through those targets. And and through those things. So I think it's great that you highlight that and get an opportunity to speak to them, and then and just continue to be a consistent voice, right? That people can look to, that that you'll tell it like it is. You'll keep it direct, and yeah, and I always love working with you as well. So 2026 will be fun. Yet
Yes,
another
it
year.
will. Yeah, watch out for us together on another podcast coming your way. All right, Roy, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
No problem.
You can find more by visiting the home of Unscripted at futureoffieldservice.com. While you're there, be sure to subscribe to our monthly email newsletter, The Insider. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.